Hello, this is Amber Rain Davis. Welcome to my YouTube channel and blog at notableink.com. Today I'll be making a card for the Altenew Educator Certification Program. This card was inspired by Altenew Academy's class Color Your Day by Teresa Calvarid. She used a photograph of a mug as inspiration, and I'll be using this 1976 vintage poster for inspiration for my card. Today we'll be using Altenew's Beautiful Day stamp set, as well as the Halftone circle stamp set for the sentiment You Color My World. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm using 1/8 inch Scor-Tape to mask off the lines, the diagonal lines, and I'm just eyeballing this. I lined up the first one with the diagonal corner. After we get this masked off, we're going to do some ink blending to get those color blocks there. I've used my Teflon bone folder to burnish the adhesive and make sure it's down firmly. We'll be using Altenew Crisp dye inks for ink blending today. This particular color is dark chocolate. I would have preferred a cooler brown, but I didn't have one, and in retrospect I wish I had added an additional layer of the darkest warm gray that I had, but perhaps next time. So I'm not being particularly careful with the ink blending because I'm doing such a thick layer. If I get any circular spots from the sponge, I'm going over it with so many layers that it ends up blending out just fine on its own. So we're doing some quick ink blending here. It took quite a while to get a dark enough layer of the mountain mist. And then once I'm done with the two large panels, we'll go in and do the stripes. This yellow is Sunshine, or I believe it's Sun-Kissed. I'll have the colors linked down below. So I'm just carefully using the corner of the foam sponge to ink up those stripes. You'll see once I move onto the orange stripe or the fire brick that because I'm working in such a small space, I do end up pulling out a piece of Post-it note tape to mask off the yellow. You can see I just got a bit of orange right there. So we'll go ahead and mask that off, and then I'll help this go quicker as well because I won't need to be as careful with the sponge. These inks blend beautifully. This is just regular Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. If you're having trouble with blending of your inks, you could also try a Bristol Smooth cardstock. But if you're doing thick layers of inking, I find that it's fairly easy to get good coverage. So we've got our orange stripe done, and we're moving on to the red stripe, and I'm using velvet for that red. I grew up in the Deep South, right on the Gulf Coast in Biloxi, Mississippi, and my mother used to make a red velvet cake for all of our birthdays every year growing up, and that's exactly what this color reminds me of. It's that deep red velvet cake. So I absolutely love this color. Fond memories there. So this is blending in just as well. I'm going to go back over it and make sure that I've got great coverage. At those corners you can see it was a little bit light, so just adding some additional ink there. And then once we're done, we'll peel up the Post-it tape and take off the adhesive release paper. So when I saw those cream colored lines from the inspiration photo, I knew I wanted to gold foil. This is a vintage gold foil from Ranger, and I only had small pieces. I didn't have long pieces, so I'm just butting them up in the middle there. I've never actually foiled before. This is my first time, so I'm not entirely sure if it makes a big difference if you spend the time to make a nice juncture there, but I knew that I was going to be covering that area with die cuts, so I wasn't too worried about how that looked. So just peeling back the foil here, and you can see that it stuck down beautifully to the Scor-Tape, so I was really happy with that, particularly for my first time doing it. So I'm just going to peel that up from the craft mat and then just trim off the excess with a pair of scissors. And of course you want to make sure you burnish the foil onto the Scor-Tape with your bone folder, as you saw in the video. So we're going to start creating some die cuts, and this is with the Beautiful Day stamp set. So I just roughed up the surface with an eraser since this is the first time I'm using this stamp set. We're using that same yellow that we used to ink up the card. And I'm going to be creating 2 flowers. I know that I'm only going to use one, but I'm not entirely sure which color combination that I want to use. I'm going to start off with the yellow, orange, and red, but I have a feeling the red and orange are too close together in tone to where it's not going to be enough contrast. So for my second flower, I'm going to do the yellow, orange, and brown that we used in the card. And I had a feeling that that was going to be the combination that I was going to like best. When I do layered stamping, which I absolutely love, I love all of the layered stamps from Altenew. I prefer to use a stamp positioner, so either a Misty or the Tim Holtz stamp platform that you see here. I find it's easier for me to be able to put the stamp directly down on the first image in order to line up each additional layer. It also gives you the opportunity, like we're doing here, to do more than one at a time, which is fantastic. That's a huge time saver. So even though I'm not going to use this particular flower that I'm stamping right now in the final card, I'm going to save that for another card because I do think it's beautiful. It reminds me of home decor fabric, something that you would see on that. So now I'm inking it up with the brown, and I think that this adds so much more contrast. I really preferred this flower. So you're going to see the difference between the 2 flowers here. So we'll move on to the leaves, and for the leaves I'm going to use Mountain Mist, and for the detail layer I'm going to use Ranger Liquid Platinum embossing powder. I wanted to bring in that gold foil in one more area, and actually when I looked at the embossing powder compared to that gold foil, they match almost perfectly. So I'm wondering if that actually wasn't gold foil. I think it might have been a platinum foil from Ranger. So you can see we're using the Versamark here. And this isn't the outline stamp. This is the detail stamp. So it's just going to add some detail and texture to those leaves. And we'll go ahead and do 2 of those so that we have a flower and 2 leaves for 3 pieces. I like to try and keep the design elements in odd numbers. It's more visually pleasing that way. So going ahead and putting on the platinum embossing powder, and we'll melt that down. And then I went ahead and fussy cut these out. I cannot believe I don't have the dies. Normally I always buy the dies because I am just rubbish at fussy cutting. These actually turned out pretty well. I practiced on the other flower before cutting out the one that I really wanted to use. So I'm going to fussy cut these out, and then once I start playing around with the arrangement, I found that I loved the gold foil on the leaves, and then it left the other flower kind of flat. So I'm just putting some removable adhesive on the back of that die cut, and I'm going to go ahead and do the outline layer on this and then heat emboss it with that same liquid platinum. And that, I think, adds some nice detail. I really liked it without the embossing powder on there, but in order for it to go with the leaves, I wanted to add it. So here, when I looked at the inspiration photo, there was that cream outline around the card. I didn't want to cut the card panel down because I thought it was a good size for the flowers, but I wanted to add an edge there. So I just used my Versamark stamp pad to ink around the edges and then just dipped those edges into the platinum embossing powder to add just a little extra detail. So I'm going to pop the flower and the ends of the leaves up on some foam tape and then work on arranging those. And you can see again that inspiration photo to the side there. So it's important to remember when you're using an inspiration photo that by no means does your final product need to look exactly like the inspiration, and it really shouldn't. You really should add your own flair to any kind of card that you're making based on an inspiration photo. So this has the similar design elements. Obviously, I've replaced the numbers with a flower, and I'm trying to make this arrangement horizontal like the original inspiration. So I'm going to put on a sentiment. You can see I practiced on the side there. I wanted to make sure there was going to be enough contrast. And this says Color My World. That's from the Halftone Circles stamp set. So this will be embossed with the same Ranger Liquid Platinum embossing powder. You can see on the back that I've already popped it up on some fun foam. We'll melt down this last bit of embossing powder, and then I'll pop the card up on a 110-pound card base, and this card is done. I hope you enjoyed this card today, and we'll try using photos as inspiration for your own cards. If you did enjoy this tutorial, please hit the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel and blog at notableink.com. Thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great day.